And this week, an insider's account of the battle for Brexit in Parliament. Conservative MP Mark Francois, a leading Brexiteer, is documenting the decision that changed the UK in his own words. And I'm pleased to say the MP for Rayleigh and Wickford, Mark Francois, joins me now. Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me on.
Now, you've written a book. Why did you decide to do this, and this particular book as well?
Well, there's a story that needs to be told about what really happened in Parliament and in the media after the 2016 referendum, when the people of this country voted peacefully and democratically to leave the European Union, and then the British establishment in its various guises, including a number of MPs in Parliament, did everything they practically could to overturn the democratic decision of the British people. And this book is about that story, and ultimately about how 28 Conservative MPs utterly refused to allow that to succeed and stopped it from happening.
I presume this book has got elements of comedy in it then, if that's what you're saying, because it was...
Well, it does. It's written on a serious subject, but you know, with an eye to humour too. So, for instance, one of the guests you just had on your show is in it. Lembit Opik was a friend of mine when he was in Parliament. We were at Bristol University together. I was the chairman of... There he is! I was the chairman of the University Conservatives. He was the president of the Student Union. He was chairman of a particular society, the name of which I can't read out on your programme, but he'll remember what it was. He'll tell you afterwards in the green room. And if Lembit will forgive me, there's an anecdote in there about when I turned down a double date with one of the cheeky girls. Right, Lembit?
It's true. You're guilty as charged.
There we are, mate. So, so there's some light-hearted humour in there as well. But the key point about the book is this was the biggest thing in British politics since the end of the Second World War. I think all sides of the debate would agree on that. And it's called The Inside Story because, if you like, it takes the reader into Parliament. It explains some of the procedures that were at work, and it explains ultimately why the so-called withdrawal agreement, which, remember, was a draft treaty, this is what all the arguments were about, actually didn't take us out of the EU at all. It was very cleverly drafted to have precisely the opposite effect. And I and my colleagues in the ERG realised that when we'd read it. Many MPs, unfortunately, never read it at all. And we fought tenaciously to stop that going through, because if it had have gone through, for reasons I explain in the book in layman's English, I sort of try to decode all of these treaties and documents so the reader can follow it very clearly. If that had gone through, then we would have been trapped in the European Union forever. And the book explains why that is the case.
I think we were all suspicious of that one as well. Now, you were a big critic, actually, of Theresa May's leadership and her handling and implementing of Brexit, and obviously that particular part of the handling of it. In your view, what would you say were her biggest mistakes?
Well, she originally, when she became Prime Minister, she gave a speech at Lancaster House, where she set out, if you like, a vision for a clean break from the EU. And that had a lot of support, including in Parliament. But at Chequers, if you remember that, there was this big meeting of the cabinet at Chequers where she did a complete volte-face and produced a white paper that basically meant we would probably go into a customs union. And because we were in a customs union, we couldn't control our economic relations with other countries. We could only continue to do that through the EU. So we wouldn't actually have left the European Union at all. And throughout the battle for Brexit, that was at the heart of the argument. As I say in the book, we spent 6 months, I and my colleagues in the European Research Group, desperately trying to persuade Theresa May and her advisors to change their mind, to abandon Chequers and to go back, if you like, to the original Lancaster House vision. So if you like, we tried jaw before war. And it's only when it became startlingly apparent that she was not going to change her mind, partly based on the advice from her advisors, that we decided we could either roll over and allow our country to be trapped in the EU forever, or we could fight it. So we resolved to fight it. And for that, we formed a very secret, if you like, whipping team, who we called the Buddies. And the Buddies has there are two members of the current cabinet now that were in that whipping team 2 years ago.
Yeah, interesting. The book sounds like a must-read. But then, if we take the comment of Jacob Rees-Mogg, who said that if you voted for Brexit, you really ought to buy this book. So is there anything in there for the Remainers or Remoaners?
Well, there's something in it for everybody in the run-up to Christmas. Because, I'm sure even Remainers, I'll be polite here, even Remainers, who were looking in outside must have become fascinated by these endless arguments night after night. The Malthouse Compromise, the Brady Amendment, the Cooper Bowles-Letwin Bill, all of these things which, looking in from the outside, must have looked as if, MPs had lost their minds at times. What the book does, whether you're a Brexiteer or a Remainer, is it explains in simple everyday English what these things were and why they actually mattered in terms of what was literally the destiny of our country. If you're a die-hard Remainer, you're probably not going to enjoy this book as much as if you're an ardent Brexiteer. But nonetheless, however you voted, it would explain what was going on. And one of the things I point out in the book, is if you recall, in the run-up to the referendum, the government spent £9 billion of taxpayers' money on a booklet that went through every single door in the UK. And that booklet said, this is a once-in-a-generation decision. And it famously said, this is your decision. The government will implement what you decide. Well, at the heart of the book is the fact that the people decided to leave, but the government didn't implement it.
No,
and that's really what led to all the arguments in the House of Commons.